Hello everyone and welcome to QuickSave Daily number 3. I shouldn't just welcome you to the channel because it's actually the daily. It's basically my channel QuicksaveTV and I'm Mike. Or Mike Pushkin, whatever you prefer to call me. Now basically, this is the most serious daily on earth. And this is going to be an educational daily about perk distribution and proportionate leveling. This idea is inspired by the Soul Collection, one of the subscribers. I think he's one of the subscribers, but nevertheless, that was the idea. It's a little bit twisted and tweaked, but the original idea came from this suggestion, from his suggestion. His or her, I'm not sure who it is. And as always, I keep my keyboard right here so that I can toss something around. I did not took my pen, so I have my pen right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and place it here so I can toss it around as well. And start off with some announcements. As you might know, you should probably know if you follow my channel closely, there was no QuicksaveTV video log number 5. And that is because I am, altogether cancelling it. Excuse me, Mike. How rude and impolite. I am altogether cancelling the QuicksaveTV video log for the simple reason that not so many people watch it, and the announcements that it was originally created for can be given in QuickSave Daily as well, so there's not really much of a problem with it. Plus I'm trying to make all the announcements from Twitter as well as on the YouTube, my channel page. So if you're interested in any announcements, you should probably check them. Now I don't see what the hell is the time on the video. I'm gonna move around stuff. I have my keynotes right here. So yes, okay. Survey for the advertisements on QuicksaveTV is still open. Please go ahead and refer to the description and please fill out the survey, whether you are a subscriber or not a subscriber. I prefer to listen to subscribers because their opinion is a bit more important to me than not subscribers. A lot more important, as a matter of fact. And be sure to mention who you are so I know who I'm listening to, because perhaps I will remember you from comments, especially if you're active. I easily remember these names from the top of my head. And yes, I need your feedback. It's very important for me to know what you think about it. Thank you so much for all your support and all your feedback that you've given me since the daily number 2. I think I announced it on daily number 1. I don't remember. Anyway, you just took part in it. Thank you so much. Your feedback, excuse me, is mandatory and crucial for me to create better content for you all. Wonderful, wonderful coffee. Now, early review of Legend Grimrock. Now, small announcement. I've made a early review of the game Legend of Grimrock by Almost Human Games. An awesome and unbelievably great game I love a lot. It's a dungeon crawler, as a lot similar with the Dungeon Master. You should go ahead and check it out on my channel. I've made a comprehensive review of the game, and I hope it will be helpful for you to decide whether or not you would like to purchase the game. I purchased the game, and my dear friend, reminded me about the game, and I could not resist not to purchase it. I think it's absolutely awesome and unbelievable. But again, it's early review. It's not a full review of the entire game. It's just my entire impressions for the 3 hours of gameplay in the first 3 levels. Okay, now. Yes, I said everything. Now, fine, done with the announcement. Mike, you have to talk about it faster. I need to switch this voice to chipmunk voice and just go ahead and talk about them really quickly. Now, perk distribution and proportionate leveling. General understanding. What is perk distribution and proportionate leveling? If you play on PS3 or Xbox 360, until the glorious day when the modding will be actually allowed to your platforms, which is not yet, and it's kind of sad, I feel that for many people, for me included, the gameplay on Xbox 360 and PS3 would be killed because there would be no modding. That's why I'm playing on computer. I was going with that to the leveling part. Basically, because of this, you will only at all times have 80 perks in the entire game for all of your characters, for each of your characters, which means that it's absolutely mandatory that you understand and you plan out how would you like to spend them if you want to be most effective. Of course, Skyrim is not a, competitive multiplayer game. This is not the case, but nevertheless, it would be really nice if you know what you're doing and you're heading to the specific direction. So you actually, you planned out and you go where you wanted to. Now, what am I talking about? Yeah, general understanding, consequences. Consequently, is if you properly spend your perk points and level up correctly with regards to the equilibrium, you will be able to create a much better character than another person who didn't. Because Skyrim and Oblivion, and even Morrowind in a way, they promote a survivalist style of play where you essentially use different strategies and tactics as well as different skills and various items not as much as you are dictated to, but as you decide to. So for example, in a specific situation, you might, as a warrior, you might still resort to magic, or you might resort to a bow. So you're not tied to a specific class like in many other games, like for example Dungeons and Dragons, you know, very famous tabletop game and a great computer game, right? I think it was only on computer, I'm almost sure. Anyway, the point is that in Dungeons and Dragons, when you select a character, you determine essentially what the character will be, what the character is on the battlefield, and what you will do with this character. For example, you will never see a barbarian cast a spell. It's just because he cannot. Whereas in Skyrim and Oblivion, you can resort to these unorthodox and unusual strategies in order to get better efficiency in combat. So for example, as a warrior in Skyrim, it's very easy to just go back a little bit, back off, use a bow, or a distraction magic, or even illusion. So therefore we have so many combinations of classes, and important understanding becomes is what's viable. You know, how can you combine these skills in order to create a viable class? And how do you distribute the perk points in order to get the best out of your class, the one that you created and you designed? Because you have only 80 perk points if you unmodded your game, which is the case for PS3 and Xbox 360 users at all times, you have to properly understand how do you actually spend them. Okay, and the equilibrium on which I touched a little bit in this video. Basically, equilibrium is what I call it an equilibrium because I believe that the best characters in Oblivion are, or in Skyrim, excuse me, are the character classes are the classes that utilize all sides of the character's, how to put it, maybe personality. So we're talking about both health, health, stamina, and magicka. So only characters that touch on all of them at the same time are effective, in my opinion. Efficient and effective at the same time. Because the character that specializes only in one of these directions, for example, a tank warrior, let's imagine, right? Only in health. So you're essentially clumsy bastard that cannot cast magic properly, and you kind of suck because of this. Because although you might overcome the challenges and you are quite effective, you're not efficient. You're not using everything. And it's kind of sad again because why would you want to give away all these opportunities to use different stuff? Or as a pure thief. Why do you want to be a pure thief? And you're lying already if you're saying that you're a pure thief, because thief skills do not have any attacking ability whatsoever. Just so you know. So if you're like, oh, I'm 100% thief in Skyrim. No, you're not. Because essentially you're already using at least one-handed or a bow, which is from the warrior tree, just so you know, for your information. So, or if you're an illusion warrior, right? Or you're an illusion assassin, right? An interesting idea for a class. You are using magic, right? But you're already a warrior as well. But you don't call it a warrior illusion assassin. You call it illusion assassin, right? Because you just want to underline the things you specialize on the most. Now anyway, enough blabbering about it. More about equilibrium you can find out on my channel, one of the videos. It's called Character Equilibrium or Class Equilibrium, I think I called it. A very, very interesting video. If you didn't watch it, please go ahead and check it out. And let's continue talking about stuff. Now, instead of talking about now that we talked about general understanding, let's talk about specific tips and tricks. Let's talk about defensive builds for melee classes. So, how do you actually make a defensive build for a melee class? Once you've decided what kind of items and skills you want to use, you go ahead and continue playing with this class, right? So let's imagine you have a heavy armor, you have 100 weapons, you have block. Right. Now that you have already 3 skills from warrior tree, you should consider having something from both magical trees from the mage and the thief. From the thief in this case, let us take something interesting. What can we take? Something exciting. Something that would support our class. Something that would help us have the edge over us enemies. Let's assume it's alchemy. And from mage tree, let's take a magicka converter into health, called restoration, and enchanting. Now that we have 6 skills, which is certainly enough, and that's how I prefer to keep it, I always like to give you 6 skills whenever I present your class, so that you have a lot of freedom. And after you have this base 6 skills, you can build on it however you want. And the funniest part is that because I don't give you any build order for the class or perk spending points, you have to think it yourself. And the best part is that if you compare with somebody else, your build will always be different from somebody else's. And this is awesome. I love to make you survive. Oh yes, this is awesome. To adapt, to change, and learn. This is the way of learning when you try it yourself. So how do we build it? generally, it's very nice when your attacking ability, attacking skill, outruns everything else you have. For instance, this is very wise to have your one-handed, in this case, outrun other skills. But it's not necessarily the wisest idea to invest most of your perks into one-handed. Yeah, sure, you could invest some, but it's not priority one. Priority one for a defensive build for melee class, which works perfectly on master's difficulty, is to invest in your block and your heavy armor, from the build we gave to you right now, from the build we've created right now, from the build that uses heavy armor, block, one-handed, alchemy, restoration, and enchanting. The priority for you, will be smithing. I never mentioned smithing, right? Because I'm an idiot. Yes, you should also use smithing. But again, your priority would be heavy armor and block, because you want to survive, you want to have this edge over the enemies. The second in priorities will be one-handed, because you want to kill the enemies and dish out this damage. And then, of course, you should work your way into enchanting, smithing, and alchemy. Alchemy will give you additional potions, which can provide you with momentarily boosts to fight against mages, to restore your health, to restore your stamina, which is very important, and even add some poisons in order to devastate the enemies. When you cannot actually, dish this additional damage, it would be nice to have this additional boost when you need it. Heavy armor and block will allow you to survive, and you should also heavily focus on health. So technically, we have the understanding. So now, once you listen to it and you analyze it yourself, you see that you have the general understanding of what you're going for. You're going for a defensive class that tears the enemies apart not by brute force, rather by stamina, by having a gigantic amount of vitality and stamina that allows him to fight with many enemies at the same time and actually use the shield on offensive. Very, very nice skill, eh? Very, very nice build. Now let's go ahead and give another idea. Let's talk about mages a little bit. Offensive build for mages. There was actually a question about it, which I will answer at the end of the daily. How do we build an offensive mage? So, we take a race, then we select the stone, we selected these things, blah, 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 very nice. Now, how do we actually build a class? What do you focus on? Well, again, as a mage, as a offensive mage, I assume you're going to use destruction. Now, you have to focus on destruction a lot. But because you're a mage, your priorities are not as such as of the warrior. In case of the mage, it's much better to have several spell types instead of having a high defense, because you generally stay away from the enemies and you engage them tactically. For example, it's not a bad idea when playing as a mage to plant several traps as you run away from the enemy so that he steps on that, gets additional damage, and while you're doing it, you just go ahead and restore your health, drink some poisons, drink some poisons and kill yourself, slice your throat and just die. It was not daily suggestion, it's just, off-topic speech. Don't pay attention to this. Anyway, while you're retreating from the enemy, it's nice to have these defensive retreating spells, such as traps, such as, say, even invisibility would be not the worst decision, because you can use invisibility and just run away from the enemies, from the illusion. Or illusion spells, my opinion, the best and my favorite spells, which excel at distorting the enemy orders, making them attack each other, and just very, very good stuff. Just make them rage and attack each other and channel it through them so they kill each other. And while you're doing it, just drink some potions and then go back and kick their asses. So how do we actually build an offensive mage? Now the question is, what skills do you want to select? Now, let us assume that you want to take destruction, conjuration, and then you take some other things. Let's assume you also take light armor, then you take enchanting and smithing, so that you can actually make light armor at the end, the Dragon Ball armor. Why would you do that? Well, although some might argue that wearing armor as a mage is not the most beneficial thing, you are technically benefited from having the armor, because you don't have to cast any alteration spells. And because of that, it just works very well. And as you slowly move towards the end game, or when you have to reach just 567, damn glasses, 567 in defense, in order to have the most defensive capabilities, you do that and you're fine. You're done for the remainder of the game. You have good defense, you can survive the fights with dragons. Dragons don't bite you in half, everything is fine. Everything else, the enchanting will give you. So, how do you focus? You should select several offensive abilities, spells, on which you're going to focus. I usually recommend, in my specific recommendation on the discussion on the destruction, I recommended you to take two various attack types. So they can be else frost and fire, else fire and shock, else shock and frost. Very, very nice combination. Each of them will work very fine, because generally if the enemy has a resistance against something, bash him with something that he doesn't have resistance to. If you want to go overkill, go ahead and take all 3 of them and just bash the enemies with different spells and just piss them off to hell. And of course, there are some key skills, key perks that you should invest on in the destruction tree, which will help you to stay on top of the enemies and actually use it effectively and very easily without using any side weapon as such. You can, for instance, take the... What can you take? There was the stagger ability, the perk in the destruction tree to the right, which allows you to stagger the enemies when you dual cast with both hands. Excuse me, that's my stupid keyboard, or stupid me, letting my stupid keyboard to fall. Essentially, once you take this perk, suddenly you can essentially stagger the enemies and they will not be able to reach you as fast, which gives you additional time to deal damage. Again, the most important, as you build a class, any class, especially the mage, you have to consider the controlling abilities, the retreat abilities, and damage abilities. Unlike with the warrior, where you're essentially, they all intertwine and you don't have to do all these things. Essentially with the warrior, you have one-handed weapon, you have a block, which is at the same time a staggering ability. Defensive and staggering ability. And you have heavy armor, which is at the same time a heavy, the armor skill, and at the same time it has several boosts to jumping from high distance, and later on in the game the right part of the tree, which I like a lot, will give you the ability to reflect the damage of the enemies. So you kinda have intertwined skills altogether. They work better than with mage. With mage you have to be more creative because you have to consider what you actually want to do, and you have so many approaches because you have 5 schools of magic. You have conjuration, illusion, alteration, destruction, and one I forgot. What did I forget? Restoration, right? I hope I didn't mention it before. And you have to select which one you want to use, because essentially, for example, illusion and conjuration are 2 sides of one and the same coin. Essentially what it does, and controls the enemies, and you have to decide which one do you want to use more. Okay, fine, that's about the mage. And practical builds, or how to get crafting skills high. Now, crafting skills, generally in games like this, in Oblivion and Skyrim, it's a big problem with these crafting skills because of the way they operate. Essentially, crafting skills, although augment your abilities to fight, I'm talking about enchanting, alchemy, and smithing, just in case you didn't understand. They augment your ability to fight, but they do not act as a substitute for your fighting skills. Do not, I repeat, do not focus on them unless you have very high fighting skills, because it's a waste of time, and essentially you're gonna grow weakly. Your character will be really weak, and you will not be able to fight against enemies effectively. Excuse me, my throat starts hurting. So, essentially, what is the time to get crafting skills higher? In my experience, in the original game, unmodded, right, and without changing of paces and etc., I got my smithing really high up when I was at my early 20s of levels, right? Once I reached 23, 24, I got it's like mid-20s, early 20s, I got my smithing really high up. So I got it up to 70, I think. Made myself glass weaponry and armor. I was a really happy person. Then I realized that I wasted a lot of time on perks on the left part of the smithing tree and went all the way over like this to the Daedric weaponry and then Dragonbone. Dragonbone first and then Daedric. And essentially, there is just at this time when you feel, in every character, when you play the game and you suddenly feel that, you're kind of dealing with the situations, you're in good shape, you deal easily with simple bandits, you deal easily with bandit thugs. Like, it's not easy, but it's not difficult either. So you're in good shape. And you kind of deal with bears, so you're fine. And you can even kill the giants else you exploit a little, else you're not exploiting, which is a great thing. If you can deal with the giants, it's already very good show, an indication that you're doing really good. That essentially means that if you're dealing with giants in a fair combat, that means that you can deal with trolls as well, and that you can continue in further and more distant and more difficult parts of Skyrim. If you deal with mages, essentially, you already are in very good shape, because mages are generally very hard opponents. I'm talking about vampires, I'm talking about hog ravens and etc. Very difficult, annoying opponents, especially in the beginning and mid-game. Until the late game, it's very, very hard to deal with them. And if you feel suddenly very comfortable against majority of the enemies, you can pump up your crafting skills up. Not before that. So essentially, you can make some stuff for yourself. You can make some potions, you can level up a little bit of alchemy, you can level up a little bit of enchanting, but not too high. Because what's going to happen is that you're going to be a good enchanter or a smith, and at the same time, you will not be able to kill anything, which is essentially a waste of time and a waste of the character. Fine, that is it. So in conclusion, this was the general understanding and ideas when you distribute the perks and how do you level up proportionately. Of course, this is kind of a general talk about these things, but I hope this will bring insight, additional insight in your life and your gameplay experience, gaming experience, because I think it's important things to talk about, but nobody really talks about them, and not everybody understands them, and it takes time to understand them. It takes time and hard experience. So I'm trying to teach you from my experience. Generally, whatever works for you is always the best. But you have to keep in mind that you can always improve what you're doing right now. There's always a room for improvement. Trust me, it's always the case. And the question of the day is going to be... Question of the day. No, it's not a question. It is a question of the day because it's the only question, but if there's going to be more questions, I'm going to answer them. I have a question. With a night elf focusing on distraction, can you give me some tips on making the best out of the class? Night elf. It's from Sergeant Snuggles. Now, Sergeant Snuggles, there is no such thing as Night Elf. There is Dark Elves. I guess you're talking about the Dark Elves. I have my gun at the ready right here. I'm gonna shoot you for that. There is no Night Elves. This is not World of Warcraft. So, I really don't understand. Is that a mistake, a misspell? He's talking about High Elves or the Dark Elves? Dunmer or Altmer? I'm gonna talk about both. So, Altmer, High Elves. They have already additional boost to Magicka, so you're in very good shape in that case. You can easily start with Distraction, no problem. So, you want to focus on Distraction. Some tips on making the best out of the class. The best out of the class, as I said during this video, you should focus on probably two, for the beginning, two different attack types. You should focus on Fire and Frost, or Frost and Lightning, and just roll with that. Try it, go ahead. Learn what enemies are more succumb to which attacks, and just memorize it. For example, sometimes it's very logical and easy to understand. Like, for instance, Mammoths are not very vulnerable to Frost. Frost Trolls, the name, are not very vulnerable to Frost either. Or they are very vulnerable to Fire though. So you have to combine this and understand. Or again, against mages, very nice to use shocking attacks because they will deplete their mana, and this way you will not be under attack from them. Then select the proper stone and just roll with it. It's not so hard. It's actually very easy because you're gonna feel, and essentially as you learn with the class, as you learn with the magical attacks, you will essentially adjust to this, and you'll see what things do you need more. Whether do you need two-handed casting and staggering, whether do you need to go further and have higher and stronger spells. So it's up to you. But general thing that's what it is. That's what we were talking about. So yeah, that's the answer. And the Dunmer, which have 50% fire resistance, which is very nice and strong ability. In case of Dunmer, you're already set to fight against fire mages and most of the dragons, half of the dragons in the game, because of your fire resistance. So you are in much better shape than Altmer. I prefer Dunmer over Altmer because 50 additional Magicka at the end of the game, by the mid-end game, will not matter as much. And that is the thing, right? So with the Dunmer, you're even in better shape, in my opinion. It's going to be harder to start, but once you reach level 10, 15, and you continue roll with it, you're going to be in much stronger shape than an Altmer, even though you will not be able to cast for as long. And again, the same idea. Just select two of them for the starter, and if you want to extend on this, you will just have to spend 3 perk points, and you will get additional ability. So if you have Fire and Frost in the beginning, getting Shock at the end will not be really hard. It's just the 3 additional perk points. And of course, select what do you want to wear. Do you want to wear clothes or armor? If you want to wear armor, start wearing armor and roll with it. Just try it. That is it. So I thank you so much for watching. This was QuickSave Daily number 3. Your educational and insightful daily. It was again about Skyrim, and as I said, I am committed to making it for 7 dailies, and then I'm gonna see how it's gonna go. If I see the response for now is very nice, you like this, guys. I'm really excited, and I thank you so much for your feedback. I just wanted to throw it out there. I love you all. Thank you so much for your feedback. It was really important for me to hear your opinion on the topic, on the survey. You can still go ahead and voice your opinion if you didn't already. There's already 30 people who did it. It's very important and unbelievably useful for me. Check out other videos on my channel and stay tuned for more content. Tomorrow on the Sunday, 15th, I will not be making any dailies. I will resume on Monday. On Sunday, I was just going to make a little break and just relax a little bit. The last 3 days, I'm not sleeping properly. Yesterday, I went to bed at 2 in the morning. Bloody tired, but at least I finished the early review of Legend of Grimrock. Unbelievably cool game. What the hell with them? Made it such a cool game. And yes, that's about it. I thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video and my commentary, go ahead and subscribe to support my work and get notified when new content becomes available. It was my great pleasure to have you here. You guys are awesome. Stay tuned for more content, and bye-bye.